In the dark depths of the Barents Sea and Bering Sea on the edge of the Arctic Ocean, a silent and profound ecological revolution is unfolding. A giant creature clad in crimson armor, the emperor crab, is growing at an unprecedented speed and scale, reshaping the marine ecological landscape of the Arctic and even the world. Their marching is not the noise of thousands of troops and horses, but accompanied by the subtle sound of friction between their shells and sediments, steadily expanding its territory in the cold and darkness. This is far from a simple story of species expansion. Behind it lies a complex tapestry woven by human activities. From the nuclear legacy left behind during the Cold War to the frozen door pried open by the burning of fossil fuels. The ambition to introduce exotic species from Nordic countries, to the insatiable appetite of the global luxury food market. This cold mirror of seawater clearly reflects how Homo sapiens, a human species, can be achieved through direct and indirect means, becoming a powerful geological and ecological force, profoundly changing the way this planet operates. When we sit in the world's top restaurants, under warm lighting, using exquisite silver tools to pry open the delicious and sweet crab legs, what we taste may not only be the gifts of the ocean. We are enjoying a paradoxical menu from the Arctic. It is filled with complex fables about intervention, imbalance, survival, and greed. At this moment, let's dive into that icy sea and uncover the layers of truth behind this crimson wave. The large-scale migration and population outbreak of any species cannot be separated from profound changes in environmental conditions. The invasion of the king crab is deeply rooted in the fragile and sensitive waters of the Arctic. The earth-shattering experiences of the past half-century. This is a prelude composed jointly by natural disasters and man-made disasters. The Arctic is the canary in the coal mine of global climate change. Over the past few decades, the warming rate here has been 2 to 3 times higher than the global average. This phenomenon is called the Arctic amplification effect. Its most intuitive and lethal manifestation is the rapid reduction and thinning of sea ice. Sea ice is not just a white covering floating on the sea surface. It is the physical cornerstone and breeding ground of the entire Arctic ecosystem. Under the ice layer, the uneven bottom provides an excellent attachment surface for ice algae. These algae bloom in spring, forming the bottom and most critical link of the Arctic food chain. On the ice surface, there are habitat, breeding, and hunting platforms that top predators such as polar bears and seals rely on for survival. More importantly, this vast white ice sheet is like a planetary-level air conditioner. It can reflect most of the solar radiation back into space, maintaining the high reflectivity and low-temperature environment unique to the Arctic. However, this air conditioner is malfunctioning. As greenhouse gas concentrations continue to rise, Arctic sea ice is melting at an unprecedented rate. The direct consequence is rising water temperature, losing the reflective protection of the ice sheet. Darker seawater absorbs more solar radiation energy, resulting in a continuous increase in the temperature of the upper layer of seawater, forming a vicious cycle of melting, warming, re-melting. Changes in ocean currents, temperature gradients in the Arctic and mid-latitudes are affecting and reshaping global ocean circulation patterns. The North Atlantic warm current, which transports heat to high-latitude regions, may have its path and intensity altered. Ecological niche vacancy and succession. Existing, highly specialized cold water biotic communities, such as certain amphipods and copepods, are under dual pressure from rising temperatures and changes in food webs. The fluctuation of population size and even northward retreat have left a gap in ecological niche. Meanwhile, some species from the south that prefer warmer temperatures are beginning to be able to survive here. For the king crab, this constantly warm sea water is like paving a smooth path for its northward journey. Although they originate from the cold North Pacific, their physiological activities and reproductive success rates may be enhanced in slightly elevated water temperatures, especially during the juvenile stage. In the past, sustained low water temperatures, close to or below 0 degrees Celsius, were the main physical barrier limiting its expansion into higher latitudes and colder seas. Now, this barrier is crumbling in the tide of climate change. Norway's Pandora's box, a deliberate introduction and its incubation period. If climate change creates an indispensable timing for the expansion of king crabs. So a decision made by Soviet scientists in the 1960s. This provides it with crucial geographical advantages and initial population sources. This can be regarded as the most famous and cautionary case of inviting wolves into the house in the history of ecology. Between 1961 and 1969, Soviet oceanographers and fisheries departments conducted a bold ecological experiment with a strong planned economy color. They repeatedly captured adult paralithodes Kampskaticus and a large number of crab fry from the Pacific Ocean. Crossing the ocean to introduce the Barents Sea located within the Arctic Circle. Its official intention was beautiful and utilitarian, to serve the fishermen of the Murmansk region in the Soviet Union, which had a single fishery resource at that time. Establish a new fishery resource with high economic value to boost the local economy. In the first 20 to 30 years, these outsiders who were parachuted into the new environment behaved very low-key. Their population growth is slow, their distribution range is limited, and they have not shown significant ecological threats. They seem to have entered a long incubation period, quietly adapting to the new environment. The types of prey, changes in water temperature, salinity structure, and even sediment types here are different from their homeland in the Pacific Ocean. However, the timed bomb of the ecosystem has already been planted. By the late 1990s, as the effects of Arctic warming began to significantly accelerate, the accumulated environmental pressure has reached a critical point. The population of king crabs has reached a singularity of explosive growth. They lack effective natural enemies in the Barents Sea. Some parasites, pathogens, and specialized predators that originally existed in the Pacific are absent here. Faced with a group of local species that have no evolutionary defense against such large and fierce predators. Combined with abundant benthic food resources, the population of king crabs has begun to grow exponentially. They began large-scale dispersal migrations at a speed of tens of kilometers per year, heading west, along the Norwegian coast towards the Atlantic, east, into the Kara Sea and other waters in northern Russia, and north, towards the center of the Arctic. Humans have personally sent the ultimate predator of an ecological niche into an defenseless Garden of Eden. Invisible catalyst, the shadow of marine chemistry and nuclear heritage. In the narrative we delve into, a more subtle and alarming factor is mentioned, the background value of radioactive contamination. This is not a plot from science fiction, but a serious scientific topic based on the Global Ocean Monitoring Network. The Arctic is one of the terminal stations for global pollutant deposition. The complex atmospheric circulation and oceanic conveyor belts continuously bring industrial pollutants, persistent organic pollutants, POPs, and radioactive nuclides such as cesium-137 and strontium-90, from mid-latitude regions here. These substances eventually merge into the ocean through snowfall, rainfall, and atmospheric dry deposition, and accumulate in seabed sediments and food chains. Cold War nuclear legacy, the large-scale atmospheric nuclear tests conducted in the mid-20th century, whose radioactive dust has spread to every corner of the world. Ice cores and sediment columns in the Arctic. Until now, the peak of radioactive isotopes corresponding to that era can still be clearly detected. These nuclides, despite their long half-life, exhibit sustained radiation effects at low doses. The long-term impact on ecosystems remains a cutting-edge concern in the scientific community. Remote contribution of Fukushima nuclear accident. After the 2011 Fukushima nuclear accident in Japan, a large amount of radioactive material did indeed enter the Pacific Ocean. Although it may be diluted during long journeys. But through the complex North Pacific circulation, some isotopes may still eventually enter the Arctic waters. Although their concentrations are usually considered below safe thresholds, they constitute an additional input source. Potential ecological stress factors. Although current mainstream research has not directly confirmed that low-dose radiation at current levels is the direct cause of mutations or population flooding in king crabs, it undoubtedly constitutes a chronic environmental stress factor that cannot be ignored. One scientific hypothesis is that radioactive elements may cause cumulative damage to the DNA of other benthic organisms with more fragile physiological structures and shorter life cycles, such as certain shellfish and polychaetes, through long-term, low-dose radiation, affecting their reproductive success rate or population resilience, thereby indirectly clearing competitors or reducing prey pressure for the more resilient and well-repaired king crabs. This is just like the scene described in the original text where those weaker creatures died and survivors adapted. The shadow of this nuclear heritage has cast a more complex and cautionary tone over the entire invasion event. When the environment is ready, with barriers eliminated, a lack of predators, and ample food, the perfect invader, king crab begins to showcase its stunning biological advantages and its bulldozer-like destructive power on native ecosystems. The reason why the king crab can be invincible in new environments is due to a series of outstanding adaptive characteristics that have been honed over millions of years of evolution, making it an efficient expansion machine. Strong reproductive ability and long lifespan. A healthy adult female emperor crab can hold tens of thousands or even 300,000 eggs at once. They carry their eggs under their abdomen until hatching, providing good protection. In addition, its long lifespan, up to 20 to 30 years, means that a single individual can produce millions of offspring in their lifetime, provided enormous genetic diversity and quantitative basis for population expansion. Broad-spectrum opportunistic feeding habits. Emperor crabs are typical underwater scavengers and active predators. Their menu is extremely extensive, including benthic polychaete worms, various bivalves, clams, mussels, gastropods, snails, echinoderms, starfish, sea urchins, sea snake tails, carrion, and even other crustaceans and small fish. This characteristic of eating everything allows them to quickly find available food resources in various new environments. Will not fall into trouble due to a shortage of certain prey. Excellent mobility and dispersal ability. Emperor crabs do not simply crawl slowly on the seabed as people imagine. They can carry out long and long-distance, marching-style, migrations. Research shows that adult crabs can migrate hundreds of kilometers per year. They can even swim short distances by swinging their feet and tails. By crossing small underwater gullies or adapting to complex terrain, this greatly enhances its diffusion potential. Top-tier defense and limited natural predators, in their newly invaded ecosystems. There are almost no organisms that can effectively prey on adult king crabs. Its huge body size, legs span up to 1.8 meters, heavy weight, up to 10 kilograms, and hard calcified shell form a powerful physical defense. Only large benthic fish, such as cod, giant octopuses, or certain marine mammals, such as sea otters, may pose a threat to juvenile crabs or occasionally molting adult crabs. But the population size of these predators themselves is often insufficient to control the explosive growth of the king crab population. The invasion of king crabs has had a profound and often devastating impact on the local ecosystem. The core mechanism lies in their high-intensity and indiscriminate predation behavior. This makes it play the role of an ecosystem engineer, albeit in a destructive way. Destructive blow to mollusk communities. Emperor crabs are particularly fond of bivalve animals such as clams and mussels. These shellfish are a key component of the Arctic seafloor community. In areas with high density of king crabs passing through, the shellfish community on the seabed will be cleared in a short period of time. The biomass has sharply decreased, and research records show that its decline can exceed 90%, even reaching the level of local functional extinction. Changing the physical structure and biological habitat of the seabed, benthic organisms such as shellfish, lilies, and mosses themselves form complex three-dimensional underwater habitats, like an underwater forest. Providing shelter, foraging grounds, and breeding grounds for countless small invertebrates and juvenile fish. When these structural organisms are completely devoured by the king crab, the seabed becomes relatively flat and desertified, resulting in a significant decrease in species diversity that relies on these complex habitats. Triggering a nutritional cascade effect, as a newly added top predator. The proliferation of king crabs can trigger a series of top-down nutritional cascade effects. They not only directly ate the food resources that originally belonged to local predators, such as certain flounders and starfish. It may also directly compete with local benthic organisms such as crabs and lobsters for living space and food. This strong competitive pressure may lead to population decline and changes in distribution range of local species. As a result, it triggers a chain reaction of changes in the entire food web structure and energy flow pathways, and its ultimate consequences are difficult to fully predict. While the king crab is rampant in the Barents Sea and is seen as an ecological threat, in its native Alaska, a different scene unfolded. The story here is full of direct and bloody confrontations between humans and nature, and the adventure of wandering on the brink of life and death driven by economic desires. These two completely different scenes together constitute the great paradox that humans face when facing the same organism. In the cold Bering Sea and Dutch ports of Alaska, the king crab fishing industry is recognized as the most dangerous job in the world. Behind this crown, there are countless lessons of blood and tears, not exaggerated gimmicks by the media. Extremely harsh working environment. The main fishing seasons for Alaskan king crabs are deliberately scheduled for autumn and winter. At this time, crab meat is at its fullest, but the ocean is also at its wildest. The crew will face sustained winds of over 60 miles per hour, enough to turn the waves into sharp water knives. Severe cold temperatures of 30 degrees Fahrenheit, approximately -34 degrees Celsius, or even lower, mixed with seawater, can cause exposed skin to freeze instantly. And cover the hull in ice layers weighing hundreds of tons, known as icing phenomenon, greatly increasing the risk of capsizing. And the elusive, crazy dog waves that can reach several floors and the ubiquitous, hard as steel sea ice. High-intensity and high-risk deck operations, steel crab traps weighing up to 800 pounds, approximately 360 kilograms. On the slippery and bumpy deck, It's like a giant pendulum that's out of control. The crew needs to use a crane to accurately throw these cages into the sea or pull them back to the deck during intense shaking. An operational error, a slip under one's feet, or a sudden giant wave. It's enough to drag the crew into the icy cold seawater. In such low-temperature seawater, the human body will lose consciousness within a few minutes, and the hope of survival is extremely slim. The casualty rate is much higher than any other commercial fishing industry. The resource paradox behind high returns, what drives people to engage in this high-risk profession is the sky-high price of king crabs in the global market. However, a cruel paradox is that in Alaska, due to historical overfishing and, more importantly, climate change, the ocean ecosystem has undergone drastic changes. For example, the mysterious and catastrophic collapse of the snow crab population in the eastern Bering Sea in 2019 is believed to be directly related to abnormally warm seawater. The fishing quota for king crabs has become increasingly tight in recent years, with shortened fishing seasons and increased harvest uncertainty. Fishermen are paying a heavy economic price for environmental changes they have not directly caused. Faced with the situation where the same species is rampant in their backyard, Norwegians have gone through a complex transformation process from initial ecological panic to scientific assessment, and then to strategic acceptance and management. Strict quota and management system based on science, the Norwegian government and the Institute of Marine Research have established a globally leading, science-based fisheries management system. Scientists use bottom trawl surveys, acoustic detection, and fishermen's reports to continuously and finely monitor the population size, age structure, sex ratio, and dispersal range of king crabs. The government sets annual total allowable catch, TAC, and quotas for individual fishing vessels based on this. With clear management goals. Control population density, slow down the spread rate, rather than unrealistic and complete eradication ***. Successfully building high-end brands and creating economic value, Norway has successfully transformed the negative label of invasive species into a high-value added export brand. Norwegian king crab has been built into a high-end seafood brand with its quality, sustainable management story, and traceability, competing with Alaska king crab in the international market. This has brought huge economic benefits to the coastal communities in northern Norway, which were originally relatively economically homogeneous. Created a series of employment opportunities from fishing, processing, transportation to tourism, emperor crab fishing experience. The new balance of humans as alternative top predators, through efficient and controlled commercial fishing, Norway unexpectedly plays the role of top predator in the ecosystem. To some extent, it has suppressed the population density of king crabs in certain core areas, slowing down their spread to sensitive coral reefs and fishing grounds in the south. Human fishing activities have become the only known and relatively effective tool for controlling this powerful invasive species. This has created a fragile, new balance, that is actively managed by humans. Whether it is the life-risking journey of Alaskan fishermen or the precise management and efficient processing of Norwegian fisheries departments and enterprises, their top and fundamental driving forces all point to the same source, the insatiable appetite of the global luxury food market. Sushi restaurants in Tokyo, steakhouses in New York, 7-star hotels in Dubai, a global supply chain. Connect the direct product of the ecological upheaval on the Arctic edge with the exquisite dining tables of urban elites and conspicuous consumption on social media. The pursuit of delicious, sweet, and compact crab meat by diners constitutes the top command for commanding this life and death fishing and precision processing across the ocean. Each and every one of us may have a subtle connection to this distant ecological upheaval through consumer choices. The story of the king crab has long exceeded the scope of regional ecology. It is like a stone thrown into a calm water surface. The ripples stirred up are spreading globally, becoming a case with universal warning significance, forcing us to think about the bigger challenges we will face in the future. At present, the expansion pace of emperor crab has not stopped. They are continuously advancing towards the center of the Arctic along the archipelago of Svalbard and the northern coast of Russia. The hypothetical scenario that scientists are most concerned about is whether they will eventually enter the northern waters of Canada and the Greenland Sea through a central waterway that crosses the North Pole and gradually opens up due to the receding ice sheet. Once this Arctic bridge is connected, it will pose an unprecedented and unified threat to the ecosystems on both the east and west coasts of the North Atlantic. The marine creatures on one side of the Atlantic will have no defense ability against this predatory giant from the Pacific Ocean, and the consequences could be catastrophic. In the Arctic region, there are many indigenous communities such as Inuit and Sami living. They have been dependent on the ocean for generations, and their livelihoods, cultural identity, and spiritual beliefs are closely linked to specific marine species such as ringed seals, unicorn whales, bowhead whales, and various local fish species. The invasion of king crabs by disrupting the foundation of benthic food webs may have indirect but profound impacts on the living environment of these key prey species. For example, shellfish are an important food source for certain seals. A sea floor with a scarcity of shellfish may lead to a decrease in the population or a change in distribution of seals. This directly affects the hunting success rate of indigenous people. This kind of impact is not only economic, but also a threat to a way of life and cultural heritage that has lasted for thousands of years. The invasion of the king crab has posed a series of thorny challenges to scientists, resource managers, and ethicists around the world. Philosophical speculation on management goals. What should be the goal of management when eradication is no longer possible? Is it to suppress the population to a certain, ecologically acceptable level? How is this defined? Or to completely transform it into a managed economic resource like Norway? What are the long-term ecological consequences of these two paths different? Ethical dilemma. In order to protect local biodiversity, which has inherent value, should we actively and massively hunt and kill a species with enormous economic value and strong perceptual ability? How should the balance of decision-making tilt when ecological value, protecting native ecosystems, conflicts with economic value, developing fisheries, ensuring people's livelihoods? Who has the authority to make such a decision? Unknown synergies and mutation pressure. Under the shadow of multiple environmental pressures such as nuclear heritage and chemical pollution that we mentioned, a deeper concern is the gene pool of the king crab, which has been exposed to this stress cocktail for a long time, undergoing subtle changes that we have not yet noticed. Will these changes make it more adaptable and invasive to the environment? Or, will the synergistic effect of climate change and invasive species trigger more severe ecosystem mutations? These are all unresolved scientific frontiers that urgently require cross-border and interdisciplinary collaborative research. The crimson wave of the king crab is a prism that sharply reflects the core contradictions and dilemmas of our Anthropocene era from different angles. It clearly reflects the profound consequences of climate change as a threat multiplier, a seemingly small increase in global average temperature. Capable of levering regional physical barriers, unleashing dormant ecological forces, and triggering a global chain reaction, the ultimate outcome is far beyond our complete prediction and control. It profoundly reveals the irreversibility and long legacy of human intervention, whether unintentional, climate change caused by greenhouse gas emissions, or intentional, species introduction. The decisions we made decades or even centuries ago will have ecological, social, and economic chain reactions that will continue for decades or even centuries, profoundly and irreversibly reshaping the web of life on Earth. It mercilessly highlights the two sides of the globalization system, global trade and information networks, which can efficiently deliver the delicious food of the Arctic to dining tables around the world. It can also quickly transform regional ecological crises into global responsibilities and ethical dilemmas that are jointly concerned and undertaken by global supply chains, capital markets, and public opinion. Finally, as we gazed at the tempting crimson crab legs on the plate, symbolizing luxury and nature, what we need to do is not just a taste appreciation. We should initiate an inner questioning: what is our relationship with nature like? Are we intelligently managing a natural system that we have personally disrupted, attempting to guide it towards a new, sustainable balance? Or perhaps we are simply greedily harvesting the final legacy of an ecosystem that we are rapidly destroying. Satisfy current desires while leaving greater crises for the future. The ice sea of the Arctic, with its ancient coldness and profundity, is reflecting all the imprints of human activities clearly to ourselves in a silent but powerful way. The story of the emperor crab is just a particularly glaring reflection in this huge ice mirror. Learning to listen to the echoes deep in the ocean and understand the complex science, ethics, and politics involved may be the wisest and most responsible choice we can make in this era of uncertainty and change. Because this is not just about the fate of a crab, but also about the common future of all of us.